indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Has everyone had a chance to look at the agenda?
Yes.
Does somebody want to move to adopt this agenda?
I'll make a motion to adopt
Second.
the agenda.
And we have a motion and a second. That was quick. Everyone in favor of adopting the agenda?
Aye.
Aye.
The agenda is adopted. Has everyone had a chance to review and approve of the minutes of the meeting held April 19th, 2022?
Yes.
Anybody have any comments on those minutes?
I have all sorts of notes, and I talked to Luke and said it was such a convoluted meeting, then rather have them change everything, I'll give it to them, and we'll give them an opportunity to, if they want to make changes, they can.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda on that condition.
I'll second.
Adopt the minutes.
Or the minutes.
The
Yeah, I'm
minutes.
sorry.
Okay, and
Should we just table it for a month? Is that the better way of doing it?
What's that? No, let's go ahead and they can decide if they want to do it. I mean, it was generally correct. I guess I was just trying to get it in the King's English.
Okay.
Oh.
Is that a
Okay.
good way to put it grammatically? And then I decided that meeting was so convoluted because everybody,
Yeah.
that was going on that, and I know that they do those from the recording of the minutes. So actually, technically, I guess that's more correct. I was just trying to have us grammatically correct.
Sounds good to me. Aye.
Everyone in favor of approving the minutes of the meeting held April 19th, 2022, as described by Mr. Airy, please say aye.
Aye.
Everyone who objects?
I'll abstain just because I wasn't here.
Okay. Those minutes are adopted with Steve's conditional comments. We have a public comment period for items not on the agenda.
Anybody want to speak at the public comment?
I think we're good.
No.
Okay.
I don't have a sign-up sheet up now, so you'll have
Okay.
to just ask people directly if they'd like to come up to the
Okay.
microphone.
If there's anybody who wants to come up, please approach the podium and give your address. I think we're good. So tonight we have a public hearing on amendments to the subdivision ordinance, and I am going to turn it over to staff to give us all kinds of exciting nitty-gritty details.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I probably should mention Ms. Lambert and Mr. Zarodny are new here tonight, so this will be a great, very dense meeting for them to start with. The request today is for amendments to the city's subdivision ordinance, and this comes from the city manager's office and the city council. So I'll go quickly over a couple of things. First, I'm going to talk about subdivisions as they work currently in the city. This is kind of a good opportunity with a couple of new planning commissioners because we'll be able to go over the whole development review process. Then I'll talk about the changes that have prompted this and how other localities around it do it, and then the proposed changes in the ordinance that was part of your packet. So in Waynesboro, a subdivision means any action that alters the boundaries of a lot. It's different from all the other applications we do, like historic, certificates of appropriateness, rezonings, zoning text amendments, conditional use permits. All those actions are discretionary. That means that they can be done at the option of the city. A subdivision, if it meets the standards of the ordinance, the applicant is entitled to it by right. So it's the only by right development that the Planning Commission sees. We also review by right development. Somebody, they're zoned for a car wash, they want to build a car wash, they submit a site plan, staff reviews that. But subdivisions are notable because they're the only by right development that you all see. So we have two categories of subdivisions currently in the city of Waynesboro. We call them major and minor. A minor subdivision can go through a simplified administrative process and be approved by staff if the lots already front on an improved public street, if there are no more than 6 lots created, and if no waivers are required. So here's an example of a minor subdivision. We've got 2 lots that were facing this way towards B Street, and now they want them to face towards Kirby Avenue. So it's an administrative review. It's a simple process. The key distinction that really, is the line between major and minor subdivisions. Occasionally the 6 lots thing matters, but not really. Rarely are you going to have 6 lots on an already improved public street. The real key is construction and dedication of public infrastructure. The major subdivision process has 3 parts in the city of Waynesboro. Part 1 is the preliminary plat. A preliminary plat involves public hearings in front of the Planning Commission and the City Council. And you all have seen a number of preliminary plats in the last few years. We had the Claybrook and Evershire replats. We had Ivy Commons. We most recently had Creekwood Village. The preliminary plat shows the overall layout. It allows for phasing of the subdivision. It's actually not a legal document. It's not recorded at the courthouse at any point. It's just kept in the planning office. And it allows for some predictability. It's valid for a set period. There's regulations that are changing all the time, zoning regulations, stormwater regulations, et cetera, When they come for preliminary plat, they get that design locked in, and so they can continue to use that even as other things change. The second stage of the process, generally once folks have an approved preliminary plat, is they'll submit a public improvement plan. And these are detailed construction drawings. They're stuff that's a construction crew can use in the field to build something. They just go through an administrative review process. They have to match the preliminary plat. And then the applicant can either construct those roads, pipes, etc., and then have them inspected by the Public Works Department and approved and received by the city, or they can bond those improvements, which means they put up an amount of money as a surety that they'll complete those things. The last stage is called the final plat. A final plat shows the final placement of all lot lines and rights-of-way. It can't be approved until the infrastructure is completed or bonded. And this is a legal document that gets recorded at the courthouse. And once it's recorded, the applicant can start selling lots, building houses, et cetera. So that's why we have to make sure that the infrastructure is constructed and that it's bonded before we can allow them to record that final plat. So that is the process as it exists currently. I'm going to walk you through an example just to further show the Creekwood Village subdivision, which happened in the last couple of years. In this case, there was a stage before the subdivision of a rezoning. So they came for a rezoning, asking for the zoning entitlement to construct those homes. The important thing to understand about that, which was approved in August of 2020, is that it was discretionary. So that was the opportunity for public hearing to be held. You all had a public hearing on a rezoning last time, and it was denied by the Planning Commission, and then the applicant withdrew it, so it did not go to council. So that was a discretionary action. We could say yes or no to it. And in that case, it included a traffic study, and it had a conceptual site plan, but this can change as you get to the actual nuts and bolts. Generally, when folks come with a rezoning, they're doing just enough work to show they generally do some work on traffic, on utilities, just to show that they can handle the additional entitlement. So once the rezoning was approved, the applicant came with a preliminary plat. And that was approved in January of 2021 by you all and by the City Council. This is the same process in Waynesboro as a rezoning, which is the source of a little bit of confusion, in that we have a public hearing in front of the Planning Commission, and then we have a public hearing in front of City Council. But it's a public hearing over a by right action. So this creates a little bit of confusion. People see the same process happening with a rezoning as happens with a subdivision, but one of them you can say no to. The other one, all that you're supposed to be evaluating is whether they meet the standards of the ordinance. And generally, obviously, you're relying on staff to tell you whether they do meet the ordinance. There's some gray area. Sometimes there's a question of should a road connection be here versus there, or something like that meets the ordinance, but there's some gray in it. But in general, if they meet the standards of the subdivision ordinance and they have and you all vote against a preliminary plat or any kind of subdivision plat, they can sue and have their plat instated. The court will look at it and say, it looks like it technically does meet the ordinance. So that preliminary plat is valid for 5 years, but it gets extended with each new phase. So after Creekwood Village's preliminary plat was approved in January 2021, they submitted a public improvement plan for phase 1 of their development, and that was approved in June of 2021. And this, like I said, it's many, many pages, detailed construction drawings, involves a lot of engineering. One issue that happens in the subdivision process is that a preliminary plat shows the overall layout, and part of the idea is that they get that overall layout without doing too much work ahead of time. So we sort out where the road connections are going to be, where the lots are going to be roughly, and then they go spend the money on their detailed engineering. But as you know, if you've ever worked in land development or construction or anything like it, once you start doing detailed engineering, that often informs the changes to the plat. So we have had several issues. I know we had one with Ivy Commons recently where they went through the whole preliminary plat process, then they went to build. Terrain issues didn't quite work, road connection issues didn't quite work, had to come back for an amendment to their preliminary plat, which forced them to go through the entire process again and delayed them again several months. So there's often some issue between these. We have a little bit of wiggle room in our ordinance for staff to approve amendments if they don't change the actual lines, the right-of-way lines. But Creekwood Village very nearly had to come back for an amendment due to having trouble getting the road grade beneath our maximum, but they were able to get it done. So then, after the public improvement plan is approved, you see they're out there building right now, clearing trees, they can come in for their final plat. And in this case, most of the public improvements were constructed. We inspected their sewer lines, their water lines, etc. Parts of the road aren't finished. You know, they often don't want to put a top coat of asphalt on the road until the construction trucks for the houses have come through. So there's some bonds that are put into the city to ensure completion. But generally, they've either bonded or completed all their infrastructure. So they submit a final plat. And this is what that looks like. Again, they just submitted it for Phase 1A, which was 30 lots. It was recorded at the courthouse. Those lots can now be sold either to the end buyer, if they're using a boutique construction company, or to a home builder. So construction on those homes can start. And if you drive out there, you'll see that they're starting to mobilize and starting to get some homes going up. So that's the entire process. Hope that's helpful to walk through as it exists today. Issues that we tend to have through this process, one of the big ones is review deadlines. In state law, we're required to act on any subdivision application within 60 days. And that's the governing body, or the body that has final approval has to act within 60 days. And that's very difficult with our process because we go to Planning Commission and then Council. It takes 3 months total from their last submission. And so if anybody really wanted to get us, they could probably sue right after their limit runs out. I don't know that a court would really hold that up, but potentially could have their subdivision instated without going to council. So that's one big issue. We struggle with the review deadlines through our process. I believe the city used to have a lot more joint public hearings between Planning Commission and City Council, which was one way that they were able to speed that up. But that requires a lot more meetings for everybody. So the second big issue we have is public hearings on by right actions. This one is kind of what we're going to talk about towards the end of this, but it's sort of gray. Generally, best practice is you want to, anytime you're taking an action that you have an option on, you're taking a vote that could go either way, you want to have a public hearing. You want to make sure that anybody who's affected by it has a chance to come out and speak. But generally good practice is not to hold public hearings if something is a by right entitlement, since you have to vote one way. So you don't want to encourage people to come out and invest their time in speaking against something if you already are required to vote for it. It also opens up the possibility that folks will vote against it and then will simply be sued. So the preliminary plats are a little bit, like I said, a bit of a gray area, because sometimes there is a small thing that it's by right, but it could change a little bit. So what a lot of localities do is they'll have maybe one public hearing with a preliminary plat, but they won't take it to council. But we used to take even final plats to council, and some very small localities still do that, take every single subdivision to council. And in larger localities, they just don't have time to deal with that on their council agendas. But in a lot of smaller localities, including here in Waynesboro, they moved away from that because of this very issue. I think I heard a story one time about final plat that came in, and a bunch of neighbors came out and spoke against it. But I mean, it was built. And they were entitled to it by right, and the council wanted to vote against it because folks were saying things against it, and the attorney had to take them in the other room and tell them, no, you have to vote for this. This is how this works. So they said, well, if we have to vote for it, why are you bringing it to us? So that's that's an issue with everybody's subdivision ordinances. What do you take to hearing? What do you leave administrative? And then lastly, we have the difficulty of the interplay between the preliminary plat and engineering issues. How difficult it is to go back and amend when you're doing what in the process. And some of that is inevitable. The the engineers here always like to say that you have to spend, you have to spend a certain percentage of a project's budget just to know how much the project is going to cost. You have to spend a certain amount to be able to answer certain questions. You can't answer all your questions, get all your information, and then decide whether you're going to spend the money. So, the private developers run into the same thing. They have to figure out how much of their engineering money they're going to spend before they go see if they can get a rezoning or not. So that's another thing that pops up. So that's our current process. So that's the first thing I want to talk about. Second thing I'm going to talk about is some changes to state law that are prompting the public hearing tonight. A couple years ago, very recently, the state passed a law requiring, saying that preliminary plats cannot be required for subdivisions of 51 lots or fewer. I'm sorry, that should be 50 lots or fewer. So basically, the locality can give the developer the option to present a preliminary plat, but if there are 50 or fewer lots, even if there's public infrastructure, we cannot require a preliminary plat, which is a core element of our structure. So a lot of localities around us are having to alter their ordinance. Some have not caught up yet. I think Stanton's updated theirs, Harrisonburg is not, but we will have to change ours. So what if there are public improvements? Because right now we have a clean system down. They come and get the preliminary plat, then they do the public improvement, then they get the final plat. The issue is they'll just have to directly submit a site plan or a public improvement plan, and then submit a final plat when the improvements are complete. We actually did this recently with a subdivision of lots at Waynesboro Marketplace for Chipotle, Popeyes, and Sheetz. They had a number of things, quite a bit of work that they had to do in the medians and around the intersection that was required by their traffic impact analysis. So typically we would require them to do a preliminary plat, call that a major subdivision. But under this new law, we cannot do that. They did not present a preliminary plat, actually have the final plat over there, which Mr. Henderson just signed for me. So they just directly submitted public improvement plans to us. We proved they did the work, they get the plat. So there was no hearings, you all didn't see it at all. That's the main impact there. So Alisand did some great work here calling around and figuring out what some other cities around us do to get some context. So in Stanton, they've updated their ordinance with the 51 lots. Their preliminary plats go to Planning Commission only. They don't go to councils. Planning Commission has final approval. But their final plats all go to Planning Commission and City Council, which is odd to me, but that's how they do it there. In Harrisonburg, the preliminary plats go to Planning Commission only, and then the final plats are approved by staff. Same thing in Charlottesville. In Roanoke, actually none of the subdivisions go to Planning Commission or Council. All by right subdivisions are reviewed and approved administratively. In Danville, preliminary plats are reviewed and approved by Planning Commission, no City Council. The final plats also have to be approved by Planning Commission. Again, no City Council. In Fredericksburg, the preliminary plats go to Planning Commission and Council, so that's the same as us right now. Their final plats and minor subdivisions also have to go to City Council, so I don't know, they must not have a lot of things on their agenda. They can do a lot of subdivisions. Lynchburg, all subdivisions are approved administratively, no Planning Commission or Council, same as Roanoke. Williamsburg, preliminary plats have to go to Planning Commission and Council, final plats are approved by staff, so they're the same as us currently as well. You kind of see that as cities get bigger, they tend to delegate more things further down because they have less time to handle stuff, but that is the situation in some other cities around here, around Virginia. So the proposed ordinance today, and you've got a copy of it and a red line version of it, we can go over. There's a number of spots where there are changes. We have to drop the preliminary plat requirement for fewer than 50 lots. So how we do that is sort of a little bit of an open question. What I've presented to you here is moving us to the kind of the Harrisonburg and Charlottesville model, which is where the Planning Commission would hold the public hearing and give the final approval for preliminary plats, and then we would continue our administrative review of the final and minor plats. Subdivisions that require public infrastructure, we'll still label major subdivisions. We'll just say that some major subdivisions don't have to have a preliminary plat, sort of like what we're doing here. So the mayor will still have to sign the final plats for anything that requires infrastructure. We will encourage people still to submit a preliminary plat and go through that process, even if they have fewer than 50 lots. There are a few advantages to doing that. One of them is that, the way I put it in the ordinance, that a preliminary plat will allow for phasing. So if you go forward with a subdivision without a preliminary plat, you will have to complete the subdivision in its entirety, and it'll have to all make sense. So this, for instance, is a picture or an aerial of Evershire a few years ago before they had completed a lot of stuff. And you can see that they've got a lot of houses going a lot of different directions here. They've not completed this road connection yet, not completed this road connection over here. So they've got a lot of houses on just one entrance here. If they came in with a subdivision plat that was just this, we would say, no, that's no good. You're going to have to make another road connection. You know, there's going to be other things that are going to be involved. But because this is part of a larger preliminary plat, they were able to phase that and work towards those things. So that's one reason that people might still get a preliminary plat. Another reason that they might still get a preliminary plat is to, again, to lock in their subdivision during that period of validity, so that if the stormwater regulations change or whatever, that they don't, that they can maintain their original entitlements. So we'll still encourage people to do that. That said, I think right now going to Planning Commission and Council is, like I said, that's quite a bit more than all of our neighbors require for preliminary plats, and so I think no one would want to do that if they had the option not to. So maybe reducing it to just a hearing in front of Planning Commission would, I think, speed that process up and make that less of a difference. We do hear a decent amount of belly aching from developers about the process for by right subdivisions. But overall, we run a pretty efficient system, I think. So there's not a lot to bellyache over. So there are other possibilities too that you all could consider tonight, and let us know if you would like to amend this or come back to you again. One of them is that we could require all the final plats to come to Planning Commission as well. That would be more similar to what Fredericksburg does, or some of those spots. The only reasons that I did not recommend that, didn't put it in here, is that at that point, you know, you already have you've already done a ton of engineering, got a public improvement plan, you know, they're building stuff. There's not a whole lot you can do. So it may be nice if you all would just like to sort of keep up with what's going on, but it adds another, you know, if they're finishing up in the last week of the month, adds another 4 weeks they'll have to wait before they can get their approval to start building and everything. So it does add time to that process. But that would be another option, and that would ensure that you would see all subdivisions with public improvements, even if they were fewer than 50 lots. Like I said, I would recommend against requiring public hearings for final plats. Again, there's just very little that you can do with a final plat. If it is correct, then it's correct, and you have to approve it. So, again, I don't like to hold a public hearing if the outcome is a foregone conclusion.
Why have we been doing that to this point, holding 2 public hearings if it's not correct?
Because the statute's required. And if you go way back, you had Luke and I talked about this. You had the preliminary plat that really wasn't necessarily required, but it gave you an idea to sell what you were doing, meaning, and if the town or city had some things they wanted added or little things, they could know to do that. And then the statutes required the final plats. Now, I'm talking back in the 70s, 80s, 90s. Luke tells me that in the last 10 years or so, when I wasn't practicing law or, you know, working for a town or city, they changed that somewhat. But that was the traditional form of it.
And I think that's more common. The smaller the locality, like I said, the more they got time to do public hearings on everything, right, and consider everything in front of. So you definitely see as cities get larger, as we got larger, we delegated final plats and minor subdivisions.
And it informed the public.
Right, exactly. That's
that, you know, you said you didn't see it, and I understand what you were saying, a reason to, because we really can't change a final plat, but a hearing for the final plat does inform the public.
correct. Yeah, so that I think
They
would be,
choose to be informed.
yeah, that'd be a reason to keep it, is to see it.
Luke, I've got a question, just.
Yes.
I'm not sure if it's a dumb question, but if you don't get a preliminary plat, because the plan is to start off and you maybe put 40 homes in, so you don't really need one at that point. Suppose that same developer decided they want to add 30 more homes or lots.
Later,
He's at 70, yes.
yes.
Would they need a preliminary plat at that point, or are they basically free to do what they want to do because they originally only planned the 40?
Right. If it's all by right, and if each subdivision is a complete subdivision in and of itself, so there's not like things hanging off that would have been required for 70 or whatever, then they could do that. I think there's a waiting, I'm going to have to go check the state code again, but I want to say that you would have to wait at least a year or something like that. We have something like that with our minor subdivisions. But that's certainly a possibility. And I think what you would see, and that's part of why I was saying with this change to state law, I would probably change things so that it was simpler to go to get a preliminary plat, because we still want people to do that. But yeah, I think totally they could. I think if you had a very large parcel that could, say, accommodate, and again, it's got to be by right, we're not talking about a rezoning, but they could theoretically get 200 houses on it. You know, they could come along and do their first phase of their subdivision as long as everything was complete. You know, they had all the common area, everything they needed for that to be a standalone subdivision. And then later, you know, a couple years later, they could come along and do an additional subdivision of the remaining part.
Without basically not a lot of restrictions, and
Well,
wasn't quite.
it's all the same restrictions as, I mean, again, we're talking about by right subdivision, so the rules are the same whether they get a preliminary plat or not. It's more about whether there's an opportunity to get them here in front of Planning Commission. So that would be a good reason to consider bringing final plats to Planning Commission as well. Yeah.
And they can't sell until they record the final plat anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But you could, in that situation, treat the new filing as it was, if it was a whole new subdivision.
Yes.
It would have to be, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The reason I'm asking too is because suppose someone starts off with homes, you know, say high, medium, range homes, and then all of a sudden they put in, somebody puts in.
Yeah, you wouldn't have any
lower
influence. Yeah.
standard type homes, and
Right.
it seems like that would not be.
You can't influence that at all, though.
You
That
can't-
yeah, you have
there's
no.
nothing you can do
Yeah.
about that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. You can't. I mean, you can't mandate what kind of house or what size of house they're building at all. You know that.
Or the price.
Or apartments.
Yeah, no, so the kind of home is in the zoning. So if the zoning is only for for instance, if it's a single family zone property, we're talking about, everything we're talking about here is by right. So they're just subdividing in accordance with what they're currently allowed. Now, if they have an area that's zoned for single family homes, but then they want to build apartments, then they'll have to seek a rezoning, and that's
That's a whole
discretionary.
different ballgame.
That's the whole kit and caboodle, the whole council, planning commission, everything. So yeah, no, that's why I'm saying I'm only talking about they're developing under the rules as the rules,
Right.
Yeah, and there's, even if they were to change the kind of house or slightly change the lot size, as long as it still meets the code, like I said, you wouldn't be able to say no even if they did come to you. Yeah. But there is, like you mentioned, there is the possibility of having a very large subdivision, as Mr. Airy points out. It's good to inform people as well, and it's an opportunity to bring those forward. The final plats, we have a number of subdivisions because folks tend to, lately this hasn't been true, they've been selling houses left and right, but usually in Waynesboro they sell not very many homes at a time, maybe 5 in a year or something like that in a subdivision. So we'll get chunky little final plats all the time. They'll want to build 100 feet of road and throw up a couple more lots on it. So that, to me, feels bulky to bring to you all. I wonder if, Steve, maybe you could comment on this, but I wonder if there's a possibility to bring something to somehow trigger the public improvement plan to bring to you all. I guess it's the same thing, because they phase the public improvement plan with the final plat, but I wonder if that could be a way to force some of those to come to you all. I don't know. Just an idea.
So,
Go ahead.
look, what would have happened on the last subdivision that we turned down if they were
Last
already.
rezoning.
Yeah, last rezoning, they were
Correct.
already by right able to build X number of homes. They just wanted to increase the number of homes. If they'd have come to y'all with, hey, we only want to build what the by right says,
Yes.
that wouldn't even come to us, would it?
That's exactly right. So that's really, I think the last one we just talked about is a perfect one to talk about. Because
Okay.
by right, they could build 40, they could come up with about.
Yeah,
So, under the new state code, we can't require them to get a preliminary plat for that.
yeah.
So, the question is, what process should that be? Now, for the rezoning, obviously, they have to come to you all to
Yeah,
change after the public hearing, et cetera, and you all denied that. If they come with the by right subdivision, we could have under our current system, we would have another round of hearings just like that rezoning hearing. And I think all the folks that spoke the other month were very well informed and solid, but I think we often have situations like that where people don't understand the distinction. 40 people come out and speak against something, but it's entitlement, and you all have to vote for it. So that's a little bit of a deceptive situation to put in front of people, I feel like. But that said, there may be small things about the subdivision, like I don't know, do they tie in a road over here or over there, or something like that? That they're still within the code, but you may want a chance to have some opportunity for people to speak to it. Maybe not full on planning permission to council. So that's kind of the issue we're dealing with, is how do we get that that information? Yeah.
But if I understand correctly, for the minor subdivision, a by right subdivision, they have to have roads existing, water and sewer existing, I assume maybe stormwater existing?
The minor subdivision or so all of these are by right.
Right,
But the minor subdivision, yes, yes,
so
currently.
but the only difference is it's changed from 6 lot to 50 lots.
No, the way the state law is, any subdivision under 50 lots can't require a preliminary plat, even if they have to build roads and stormwater and stuff like that.
So that comes out then.
Right, so that's really what we're talking about. Yeah, the ones that already have public infrastructure, doesn't really matter, it's all where it is anyway. But this is really an issue because we're going to have subdivisions now that are real new developments that we cannot require a preliminary plat for. So they'll be able to go straight to their public improvement plan, submit that, and then a final plat.
But I guess the nice thing about it is, though, they don't get a final plat, which means they can't sell anything until all that's done and inspected and accepted by the city.
Correct, yeah. No, the city's still protected. It's really more just a matter of getting input on little elements of that initial design. That's the main thing that's at stake for you all. And again, there's only so much input you can have because they're entitled to it, but often there are little things here and there,
I'm trying to sort of back out and look at this as, I'm a business owner, look at how I run a business. And there's a point at which public input is important, and I think it's valuable. And so at some level, to have a public hearing where it's required, I think is good. And for us to take a look at preliminary plats where encouraged would be good. But at some level, we hire experts to do the nitty-gritty. We have a super qualified staff of engineers and planners. How many times do we have to go through this to make something happen? And as a builder, I might choose another municipality if it kept going on and on and on.
And I guess just to emphasize that, good practice is that if there's a decision to be made, you all should do it. That you
Right.
should not be delegating to us the sort of what your community
But
wants.
at the same time, we should.
But you should delegate to us whether they follow the code or
Right,
not.
right.
That's not as good for you. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. I think where there's a decision to be made, I'm fine with that, but I don't think we need to
Yeah.
we don't need to overvisit. It just bogs things down.
Well, I will say that this planning commission does tend to move them along. It isn't a matter, I've seen some that, for reasons of some of the folks on it, don't like the builder or whatever.
Yeah.
It's been held up.
Yeah, and you can create a process that still meets all the elements of the by right, stuff, that causes trouble, if you just want to
Right.
harass people. But in the end, they're always going to get their subdivision.
Right,
If they're
right. And
so,
why waste our time doing that?
as Jim Shaw used to say, if you're going to say yes, why be a jerk about it? So, but yeah. So the question is, how much of that needs to see? Like I said, there is gray area in the little things in a subdivision. So it makes sense to me to at least. I wish we could get all of these to at least Planning Commission for a hearing, but because of that state law change, the under 50 lots ones are awkward now. We have to figure out. I don't know. What to do with that.
Just a comment. In my experience, having gotten to a by right phase already, you've gone through so many different revisions of what that code is going to be for your town. And once it gets to that place and it's by right, then those things have already been settled and they're basically written into the code of the city. The real benefit of having the preliminary plat and to have the public improvement plat is that you do get the buy-in from the public. And there is a benefit to that. Yes, it causes there to be more meetings and that kind of thing, but maybe requiring them to combine, as far as the developer, the preliminary and the public improvement together. So when the first time we see them, those things are what we're looking at. And submitting that to the Planning Commission would be of help, because I know in my experience, having just worked on one of these in Scottsville, when we got to the place where the pictures went up and the public was in the room, people were very vocal about the fact that even though it was by right, are we going to have native trees? Are we going to protect the stormwater and the river, the James River? And is it going to tie into our emerald necklace of trails? And is it going to... And that's what it took to get their buy-in, to let them have a voice to say, this is what's important to me, and this is my community, and I'm invested here, and I want to see this. And for us as a commission to be able to say, we hear you, and yes, we support that too. And developer, I hope you know that when you come back, that we want to see this in your plan. We want to see this type of tree and this type of, tie-in. And oh, by the way, you say you're only developing 45 acres of this. There's 150 acres on this plot of land. So are you planning phase 2 and phase 3 right now?
Mm-hmm. And sometimes folks coming to those can help them become aware of the ordinance. Again, a lot of those things, if your ordinance doesn't require native plants, like you can't do the native plants, and that's not how it works. But sometimes people become aware, and then they can say, well, we would like the ordinance to change in this way or in that way later on.
And we'd like to support your city's comprehensive plan. If your comprehensive plan says those things are important to you, then yes, I'm coming in here to help develop your city. And so it ends up being a cooperative at some point. Yeah, you're going to hear a lot of pushback sometimes from people, and they have real concerns that need to be heard, maybe not necessarily for this situation, but to take into consideration overall for the development of the town. And so, but maybe combining those two steps, so there's not the need to bring them for 3 phases and just have that second,
But we can only encourage a preliminary plat for less than 50, right? We can't require one.
Right, but I think she's saying if we had some way to require the public improvement plan to come to you all. That's a little weird, because most of the public improvement plan is like very detailed engineering stuff
Right.
that you show not
and
signing off on. But
there's layers
of it.
sewer and this and that. So,
But there may be a way to do
It's not
that.
necessary at all, but to not allow the public to speak at all. I'd be interested to know how, was it Lynchburg that doesn't allow any public hearing for?
Lynchburg and Roanoke, and then most of the larger counties don't do public hearings for subdivisions. Like I said, most of the ones that we looked at that were about our size tend to just send their preliminary plats to the Planning Commission.
Okay.
But the larger ones, yeah, and then Roanoke and Lynchburg don't do that at all. And smaller ones tend to send them to everybody.
Planning Commission, then is there a public hearing at that point, after the first review?
After, sorry, when what
When the
comes?
preliminary plat comes, is a public hearing?
Here in Lynchburg?
No, here.
Oh, here.
Here.
Yes, yes.
If we were to do it that way, would there be a public hearing at any point in there?
So the way that I have it written currently is that preliminary plats would come to you all for a public
Okay,
hearing.
got it.
But what I'm saying the issue is that
We can't require that.
Right.
is that if it's a smaller, if it's 40 lot subdivision like we talked about last time, that's what we have to figure out.
Yes.
But there was also rezoning to add lots.
Right, the rezonings are all still going to come to you, right? Yeah, rezonings will always be,
They'll have
anything that's changing someone's entitlement will always have a public hearing.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're talking about something that they're already entitled to, and really, it's just details.
right.
Yeah. So if you want to, you could introduce, and you can motion and vote on the ordinance I presented for you. If you want to try something different, if you want us to look into whether we could bring public improvement plans to you, I probably need you to table it for now. We could still hold the public hearing, it's all the same subject. But we would probably have to look at that and figure out a way to make that work with our process.
So what are our thoughts, people? Oh, wait, do I have to open the public hearing first?
You all can discuss, then open the public hearing, or
Okay.
open the public hearing, then discuss.
I
whatever you
forgot
want.
my cheat sheet of what order to do things.
I got 2 questions real quick. Luke, can you give us an example of when we would be voting on something that they're entitled to? Like, what's the point?
Preliminary plat. So, for instance, if under our current ordinance, if the state had not passed this law, the same developer from last month who came here for the rezoning, they wanted the 60-some houses. If they said, and they did, they said, we're giving up on that. But they say, we're just going to come and build our 40, however many houses, or however many they're able to fit in the end. They would come and have a preliminary plat application to you all. And so it would be the whole same process as last time, public hearing, et cetera, et cetera. But it would be just for that by right preliminary plat.
And we have to approve.
And you would be if it met the ordinance, you would be obligated to approve.
And that's not ironic or redundant.
Nope.
See, that's what I'm saying. It seems to be it's redundant.
But
I mean, there might be a small thing, and especially when they're in the room in front of you, there's a sort of a little bit of leverage just created by the hearing
Yeah.
where, you all say, well, I really don't like the way that you all did that sidewalk thing. We'd really like you to do this. And they want things to move along, so they'll sometimes tweak it right there. It's a little bit, so that's sort of a nice thing to keep. At the same time, it's a little deceptive because it's perceived leverage. It's not real leverage. They can, at any
Right.
time, go to a court and say, this meets the ordinance, please prove it. So,
Okay.
but it does create a little bit more of a process for you. I'm trying to think of a good example of a time where something changed. I know the Creekwood Village development actually is an example because they have the option in the subdivision ordinance to build a sidewalk on both sides or the multi-use path on one side. And there was a section of it where they had sidewalk on both sides. And I think council wanted the multi-use path on one side. And technically in the ordinance, they can do whatever they want. They have the option. So they did not have to agree to that. But they did. I mean, they want to go along. They don't want to belabor this process. So they did. They did the multi-use path on the one side instead of the sidewalks. So so it creates an opportunity for some input on little things like that. Like I said, it's a little tough because it's perceived leverage. Like if they wanted to just come back and say, "No, we're not going to do that," they can do that. But most folks, they want to make everybody happy as much as they can, as long as it doesn't cost a lot of money.
Yeah. Thank you.
So what are we thinking?
Anytime we can push the decision down, I think it's better. Like, it doesn't need to be made at the top all the time. Like, we can make these decisions earlier, I think.
You want public, see if the public has anything to say.
I will. Well, I was just discussing it with you guys just to see if you had any comments. Okay, so I would like to open this public hearing on amendments to the city subdivision as described by our illustrious planner. Anyone who wants to approach the podium? These are amendments to City Code, Chapter 74, Divisions 1 and 3. And then, I can do A and B in the same public hearing, right?
Yeah, they're advertised as a single public.
Okay, an amendment to City Code, Chapter 74, Sections 74 to 37 and 74 to 38 relating to preliminary plat procedures in accordance with 15.2.2260 Code of Virginia, requiring us to act on a preliminary subdivision plat, removing the requirement for a plat to be forwarded to the City Council for approval. Is there anybody who would like to make any comments? Now I can close the public hearing. All right. Now, what do we think?
I kind of like the idea of, doubling it up. And I know I've got a history of plans review. I think all of us in here have got enough, something or other, maybe something where the plans are available to the planning commissioners for 10 days leading up to the hearing or something like that. Would that be possible? I'm not accepting a set of plans in the mail or anything.
I mean, yeah, anytime that there's a hearing advertised, the plans are available. I maybe don't do a good enough job of getting them to you fast enough. We get them doing the packet, but
You have met my expectations.
okay, great.
I guess my problem is I'm just used to, I've 30 years of it and used to that. And the public input, as was mentioned, can be helpful and is also helpful to the developer. You know, the multi-use path, I don't know that it really cost them that much more.
No, I think that's why they
In fact,
did it. I
it's
think it was
probably a
about
little
the same.
cheaper than the sidewalk.
Yeah.
But it does help the city, and it allows, rather than just the planner, to, okay, that looks fine. Allows some input as to what might work a little better.
It's a little bit more pressure. I know I said in the comment letter that we would prefer the multi-use path to the sidewalks, and then that's not how it came in. But when the council said it, they wanted it to move along. They came back with the multi-use path. As I mentioned, if you want to do something that brings all of these to you all, I'll have to go back and look at how to do that. The one I have in front of you right now does not bring the under 50 to you at all. So.
You guys feeling like we need to
I'll
see
tell
the
you,
other?
50's a lot more than 6.
It's a lot more.
I don't know that we have any place like that in the city, but it's a lot more than 6. In fact, most of our subdivisions have
I was gonna say,
maybe topped
especially in
a little bit
Waynesboro,
over 50, but not a whole lot.
especially in Waynesboro, that's typical size of a subdivision.
And how do we enforce, somebody doing 50 and, or 49, 49, 49?
I don't know that you can, I think, but except you enforce it by making them bring a plat each time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Can you do that, though?
Well, how you,
Yes. I
yeah,
mean,
you can do that.
the subdivisions, again, this shouldn't change anything too much. I mean, even if they're not coming to you all, that they're having to go through the
Yeah,
review
process,
and build according to the same code. I do think that if we make the gap between getting a preliminary plat and not getting a preliminary plat a little narrower, just not sending the preliminary plats to council is a big help there. That's the main thing they don't, because that adds the extra month, the extra hearing. So just getting it to planning commission already makes it a little bit easier. It's only, okay, they only have to wait a couple weeks.
Right.
They have to do one hearing. So I think if it was either pulling some weird thing and having to wait in order to do their 49 later versus just coming to you all for one meeting, I think they would just come to you. So I don't think that would be a huge issue. But
Well, and the other part of it is that if in fact there was a property that looks like they might do different phases, that's a question to ask. Are you all planning to do that? If so, what is your general plan for the roadways, water, sewer, things like that? At least can ask the question, and that might get them thinking on that.
yeah, and the preliminary plats are nice for them to have too, because most of them like to phase it. I mean, they generally in Waynesboro can't sell 50 houses in
Yeah.
a year. So they like to chunk out those little phases. So I think a lot of them will still do that. But
That's like a property over the hill from me, that, they advertised over 100 homes on that little bitty lot right there. And ain't no way they could build them all there at one time. They'd have to phase them,
yeah,
so.
right.
So are we going to table it to come up with something better, or go with Luke's suggestion?
I'd rather just table it, just to give it the time. Like, I could support it tonight if that's what everybody wanted to do, but give it another month to,
Yeah, no reason to,
Well-
yeah, we'll look into it and I'll see if I can come up with something, a good
we-
option.
Okay, something in between.
Well, we do have 2 new planning commissioners, And it would give them time to review the proposal in more depth. Instead of just throwing them into the wolves.
I think Sherry's already been on
Wait, I did my homework.
Okay.
it.
So we're ready.
And you mentioned something about a delay where they had to wait for a year before they get to the next part.
Yeah,
If
I
you
can
could
check on that as
Check on
well,
that.
yeah. So I'll try to get y'all some more information there.
Yeah.
And I'll try to figure out a way up. Again, we've held the public hearing, so we've already got advertised. That's great. I'll try to figure out a way that we can get all plats involving public infrastructure in front of you at some point.
Okay.
That,
Or could we make a rule that it would be public infrastructure over a certain number of lots? I mean, 6 lots,
yeah,
10 lots, 40 lots.
Yeah.
You know.
Right.
And it might be that think about that, because you've been doing the small lots subdivisions, and that's working fine. It's just, I guess we're concerned that, my concern is a jump from 6 to 50.
oh, yeah.
And that's a lot. I may not even mind leaving what we're doing now for 20 lots. But when you start, fairly large subdivisions, I think that maybe we need to look at, what do you think? What do you think?
I'm agreeing with you.
From the council's
Yeah.
point of view.
Yeah, no, I like the idea.
The problem is
So-
we're
I'm just
we're tied into that 50 lot threshold.
Yeah, that
though,
we
so-
can't, that
It's really a
50
matter of-
threshold is not
That's the
negotiable.
state,
Right.
right?
So if
That's
we
not
don't,
negotiable.
kind of our options are, we either you only see the ones over 50 lots, or you see them all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is an.
That's kind of the,
I don't.
Or somehow see
I don't
them.
see seeing them wrong. I like a number like 20 or 25, but you can't do that, then.
But if we can't do that under the statute, is that what you're telling me?
right, so I'm saying with the public improvement plan, I'll try to come up with a way that we could not have every single one of these come to you.
Right.
Well, but I guess there's another thing to think about in that regard. Maybe there's a reason to see them all, because council's not seeing them. That's the other part of it. If council's not seeing them, then maybe we ought to see them all.
And it wouldn't be fair to pass the buck to the planning staff to review them all.
Well, they have to do
Yes.
that anyway.
Yeah.
That's,
You're gonna have to.
I'll have to anyway, yeah.
yeah.
It's not an onerous, like I said, just not going to council is a big time savings. Just going to planning commission isn't terrible, I think.
Yeah.
I think, even these folks have wanted their plat for about 2 weeks now, and we've been wrangling over some easements, but, that's normal
Yeah.
development. Well, it's not like people aren't gonna develop here because we added 4 weeks to their schedule.
Yeah, I'm all for speeding up the process because that makes Waynesboro more attractive to developers, and which in turn brings a revenue stream in.
Right. But I think we're pretty efficient currently,
Yeah.
so.
Okay. We ready to?
Depends who
table
you're
this?
comparing us to. Everybody coming over from Charlottesville's thrilled.
So, do we make a motion to table this till
Yes.
we get some,
Move to table to next meeting?
I'll second.
everybody?
The table to when?
Till the next meeting.
Meeting.
A meeting, okay.
Okay. Everyone in favor, do we have to have another public hearing about this if we change?
No, we've already had a public hearing, and I think we addressed all the potential things
Okay.
that might change
Okay,
in
perfect.
our discussion. So I would assume that the
Okay, so
property.
we have a movement to table our final recommendation until we get more information from Luke regarding how we can sort of manage which ones come in front of us and which ones don't.
Yep.
Everyone in favor?
Aye.
Everyone opposed?
Hey,
You're opposed? Okay. Motion carries.
All right.
Okay. And that is the end of our public hearing, right? I mean, that's the end of now we have
Public
other
hearing.
business and commissioners' correspondence and communication.
I have several items of other business if no one else does. So. First, I have a couple of just things to make you aware of in the future, the coming down the pipeline stuff. This one will probably come to you next month. We have in our ordinance a parking maximum in addition to our parking minimums, so we very tightly regulate the parking. The maximum for non-residential uses, so that's commercial stuff, requiring 50 or more parking spaces, can't provide more than 110% of the minimum number of spaces required under the parking ratios. However, this maximum shall not apply to parcels that are located in the HB districts that are not in the corridor overlay district. So, a little convoluted, but essentially, we still have very conventional parking minimums in all of our code, which many, cities is sort of not progressive or whatever, but we also try to split the difference by having this parking maximum as well. And then we exempt HB parcels that are not in corridor overlay districts. However, corridor overlay districts cover basically all of our primary commercial corridors, which is where the HB zoning is. So it really applies to just about everything. So I bring this up because we have strong interest from two very significant national restaurant chains and locating in the city that we're working with at the moment.
Are we finally going to get an Olive Garden?
I can't speak to the names of the but high volume, large, lots of revenue restaurant chains, will be very popular. That are this is a condition for them. This is a non-starter for them. They require more parking than our ordinance allows, and so as part of our discussions with them, said they will apply for a text amendment asking to give them a break. So still working on some proposed language with them, but I wanted to bring this to your attention and see if any of you had any input on what you wanted that to be. We talked about on a corridor, any parking behind the front row of parking has to be screened. We talked about other ways to achieve the goals of this.
Can you give me an example of a restaurant in town that needs more than 50 parking spaces?
I guess they exist.
Plaza Azteca, because they clog up Windy Grove Drive.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is that kind of size restaurant?
Yeah.
Like
it'd be a
like another
large
Applebee's
restaurant.
or?
Yeah, like the Fish and Pig does that kind of volume, or the Los Panchos, kind of where that Roadhouse used to be. Yeah, that scale of volume. Outback Steakhouse is a pretty big parking lot. So something like that is going to have a pretty high volume. And again, some of it is it's their perceived need, so it's about their site selectors and what they want. And so if we want them, we have to work with that. But,
I'm just curious why this is the way it is. I mean, I know 50 parking spaces sounds like a lot,
yeah.
but suppose you had something, if it wasn't a restaurant, but something else that
Right. Require a lot
I don't
more.
know, like a little.
Well, it's sort of, for your Walmart's on your main corridor, if their minimum parking is 100 spaces. So this would say, well, you can't have more than 110 spaces if you're in that main corridor. 'Cause basically, you just don't want seas of parking.
Right.
in your main corridor. So we have a number of things on the corridors. We don't allow them to have more than a 90-foot setback. So a lot of them have to have just one row parking up, or two rows of parking up front, and then the rest of it's towards the back. So we have other ways of maintaining that
Yeah.
goal, but the goal is just to try to not have seas of parking as you
Right.
drive along.
Yeah, I'm gonna say, can't we just put it in the back? Because I get what you don't want, I don't want, don't want to drive past those big parking lots on the west end either.
Yeah. We
Out
can just,
front.
so some kind of screening would probably be.
Yeah, I think some kind of screen, that's a good idea.
Hopefully one of them's coming into Ruby Tuesdays.
Huh?
Hopefully one of them businesses is going in Ruby Tuesdays.
If they want to comment on the names of the restaurants during their
No, I
public
ain't
hearing,
asking for a name. I just hope one of them's going in that building so it don't keep sitting
Oh,
vacant.
we actually have a site plan application in progress for that building, which they want to tear that building down and actually build a car wash there. I'm
Another
shocked
car wash?
I'm shocked that car washes make that much money, but apparently they make a lot of money because they are
Huh.
spending a lot of money.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I can't see one that close to the other one down there that's 100 yards down the road.
They may be different services of a car wash, though.
Yeah, they could be like, what is it, Clean Machine in Shawsville, where they actually wash your car by hand, or
I don't know. I'll have to check that site plan.
right, well, that's something for you all to put your think caps on about those parking spaces.
This restaurant, they don't want the parking in the rear.
No, they're okay with, they just need the extra parking. So there's a lot of different ways we could go about this. We could just get rid of this maximum. We could give an exemption if you screen the parking. So I'm just trying to come up with, if any of you have any strong feelings about.
But it's a deal breaker for them if they can't get
They
the
can't get
parking
the
that
parking.
way.
They just need the
Okay.
parking on the site, yeah. So we said we would work with it. So,
Okay.
yeah, screening sounds like a good idea. That was what I liked. The other big thing is Windy Grove's PUD down here. We did a PUD amendment for them for this parcel, and they put additional apartments there. The rest of this is all zoned for commercial, as we all know, commercial real estate. It's actually, commercial real estate's gotten a little bit better with the current building boom, but still not a lot of demand. So they are interested in whether they can get a PUD amendment for a hotel on this parcel next to Home Depot. So I said I would make you all aware of that. And they have some other things they would love to change here and there, because right now all of it just continues to sit. But apparently there is at least strong hotel demand, but that was not in their original PUD as one of the allowed uses.
I thought it was a hotel going on the other side.
There's
Yeah.
Okay.
that's the one under construction right there now.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I thought it was one right there already.
And there's one right across the street, but two across the street.
Yeah.
That's a hotel, but I mean, that right off the interstate, and it's so hard, there's so much hotel demand over in Charlottesville right now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's just a lot right around that.
Plus, with new hotel, if you open up in time for graduation at UVA, you can fill it.
Yep.
And JMU.
So anyway, they're interested in
And
another.
Liberty.
That'll
Yeah.
If you think about it, Liberty would do it too.
Yeah.
But I just want to know if any of y'all had any heartburn over that, or
No,
Seems like a perfect place to put a hotel.
yeah.
yeah, they knew that next to the neighbors on this side of the road was a non-starter, so they're thinking the interstate side.
I mean, what are the numbers on the revenue streams for a hotel for the city?
They're good.
Huh?
They're good.
That's what I figured. I mean,
Yeah, meals and lodging tax are the main commercial taxes that cities can benefit from. So hotels and restaurants are great business. We get a little cut of sales tax from like a grocery store, but not a lot.
Yeah.
Really, it's meals and lodging.
Yeah, I cut that check this month. I know exactly how much you get.
Fantastic. Yeah, Lowry can answer that question better.
I keep paying it, so there's that. All right, what's next?
Those are the only two items for next month. And then so I have two additional things to say, though. One of them is just to introduce our new members of the Planning Commission. I don't know if Sherry or Nick, if you want to say anything about yourself or introduce yourself to
I've been a
the...
resident of Waynesboro probably well over 60 years. And I've lived in every ward. So I've lived in every ward in the city. And, I'm just glad to see the growth, because in the 90s, I was telling Sherry that my wife and I were talking about possibly moving out of Waynesboro after I retired, which I didn't retire until 2014. But it was just not anything here. I mean, you could buy groceries, and that's almost it. And it's just great to see that. I mean, I don't mind the extra traffic. I mean, it's just great to see. And I hope that it will continue growing. And just looking at some of these, I drove through Evershire here a few weeks ago, because I thought it was just that one drive, and I went in there and said, oh my God, I didn't know there was that many homes.
don't do like I did. I got lost in there.
You almost can.
I actually had to use my GPS to get out of the subdivision. I did not realize it went as far back as it did.
That's what happens when somebody from Ward A comes into Ward C. It's just that way.
I did the same thing in Ward D like a month, maybe 2 months ago.
It's great. I'm just glad to see it. I hope we get the Natural Museum here, because I think if we can get that somewhere close to downtown, I think that could be
I think that's
another
coming.
boon to Waynesboro.
That's approved, and it'll be done at the Advanced Store parking lot.
Yep.
So that's a done deal.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's still a few years away, right?
It'll be built in
23, I
5.
think, is when we,
The museum, I think is a little more than that, because that, I thought,
well, the budget comes out 23 for it, so it'll be 24.
Yeah.
So that's-
It's less
I think
than-
that's gonna really be.
And the improvements.
It's less than 5 years. I don't know
Constitution
what it
Park
is
was
now.
approved too.
Yeah, it's just down the hill here, and there's that parking lot where they have the fireman's auction.
Right, right.
And that's that big parking lot, the farmer's market's right there. That's
It's so great.
going to be a museum.
this whole section south of that will all be rebuilt, that part.
And the greenways all decided.
So, unlike my friend here, I have not lived here my whole life. In fact, I've lived all over the world. And my husband, who is British and just got his American citizenship as well, he's
Great.
dual citizen. We actually moved to the East Coast about, well, right as the pandemic started, from the West Coast via England. So we lived in London, moved to the West Coast, then moved here. And we've been in Scottsville, and we were there and just really felt like we needed to have a community that was larger and more progressive, and to really be able to be a part of it and to give something, you know, that we have to it, and give our whole heart and soul to it and become a part of the community. I was telling the mayor that this is our 26th home that we've had and our 7th in 8 years. So in 3 nations. So we've developed a lot of property and have not really been to the place where we felt like we just wanted to stop, you know, to stop the packing. And now we do. And I think that's a testament to the community. There's something so lovely about this place. And when you've seen so much of the world, and you come here, I just think it's really lovely. And we just happened last fall to see somebody stick a self-drawn sign in their yard that said "For sale by owner," and we just stopped the car and called. We didn't need a house. We weren't in the buying mood. We just came to Waynesboro just to go out to a restaurant, you know, and see what was around here. And they said, we just came back from sticking that in the yard, like we just shut the door behind us. Well, can we see it? Well, not for 10 days, we're painting. Okay, but can we see it? Well, long and the short of it, we bought it and didn't get to move in until January because they wanted to stay. But we didn't plan on living here when we bought it. We just didn't. But for those 2 months that we waited, we just said, why rent this? Why don't we just go and just give? And that's why when the openings came up for Planning Commission and Rob on Historic Commission, we just jumped in because we want to be a part of the community. So I believe we have something to give. So, yeah.
Thank you. The last thing to say,
Don't do it.
yeah.
I already know what's coming.
Damn it.
You already do. Yeah,
Oh,
many
no.
many people know already in the city, but I had not ever said it to the Planning Commission out loud. But I am leaving the city, so
Where are you heading?
opposite to Sherry's great speech. I'm actually going overseas for a little while as well.
I can't
But-
fault you.
Yeah. So I gave quite a bit of notice to the city, so they've been advertising my position. I know they've interviewed somebody already, but I will be here until July 1st. So I'll be here for the next month's meeting as well, but that'll be my last meeting. It has been just a pleasure to be here and part of this community. And
Well, you suck, but I'm happy for you.
5.5 years. Good
I'm
time.
happy for you. That's awesome.
Thanks. But I've really loved working with you all. This has been a great planning commission. And
We're
Gonna
gonna
be a
miss you.
hard
I
act
have a
to
big
follow.
speech, but what?
Going to be a hard act to follow.
Oh,
Yeah, you
no,
are.
not that hard.
Sure.
If we vote.
I'm
not
a good
to
talker,
accept-
but not good at everything, not good at a lot of other stuff.
If
What?
we vote not to accept this change, you got a second?
Second.
Fortunately, I already by right, yeah. I have the ability to do what I want, so, anyway. But I just wanted to let you all know so you're aware of it.
Well, Luke, having heard the comments from the commission, if you can, you might maybe talk to the attorney and see what recommendations might be made. And there may be, the recommendation may be we really can't do what we're talking
Right.
about. But, you know, maybe have some sort of a recommendation for us Doesn't have to be a wholesale change of the thing, but I think you've got a idea of what the commission's thinking.
Yeah, I wanted to get this wrapped up before I left, so it's, this has actually been hanging out there for a little while. But there's a lot of things we're trying to wrap up before I leave you.
Hard.
Speaking of which, sorry, if I could change the subject on you again, I should have mentioned you all, the Port Republic Road Neighborhood Plan we are finally moving ahead with. We had our kickoff meeting and neighborhood tour last month, and the community workshop will be January 2nd to 4th. So that's coming up. If you all want to make an appearance. But we have a consulting firm that's helping us with that project, and also trying to wrap that up before I leave as well. That's going on additionally.
When's that meeting?
That so they're going to do a community workshop. They're going to do basically 3 days. So they'll do a session every day, maybe 2 sessions on Saturday. It'll be a Thursday, Friday, Saturday thing. Yeah, coming up June, I believe 2nd to 4th. Is that Thursday, Friday, Saturday? Yeah, it's the city's 3rd historic district, and really interesting history. One of the oldest African-American neighborhoods around here. It's
Awesome.
laid out by a black surveyor right after the Civil War. And there's a lot of older residents of the city who grew up there who, at the neighborhood tour, just walked around and told stories from when they were kids of all the people that lived up and down, and just every single house, they knew exactly who it was and all that. So it was back in the day, they were kind of, African-American neighborhoods were kind of self-contained. Folks couldn't go into areas. So they had stores and, school and social club and all that stuff. So pretty, the neighborhood's changed a lot, and they just want to have a community workshop that helps to pass some of that on to younger, newer residents and help them just know what history is, and also talk about improvements in the neighborhood. So that's what's going on with that
Is
one.
that gonna be on the city website, the details?
I think we have a page about it. I'll have to check. I know we put some stuff up on Facebook. But. And then Alice Sand is on vacation this week, but she'll be back next week. She's not going anywhere, don't worry. She bought a house. She's very excited about Waynesboro.
Oh, great.
And she is also very soon, I think, it's a good time to bring in a new planner, new community development director, because I think the city's going to have to start thinking about its next comprehensive plan and land use map soon.
That was such a big job.
It was such a big job, yeah.
That was such a big job. Like, I think I kind of have.
Yeah, but I mean, as I look back at the comprehensive plan and the issues the city was facing at the time
Yeah.
are totally different from what we're facing now.
Yeah.
And a lot of the things in that plan have been done. A lot
Yeah.
of the stuff is
Well,
rolled.
that's good, though.
A lot of that vision has been realized. So, things are shifting, and the plan's it's aging. So
Right, we got to change.
it needs
with
to
the
be a
time.
new conversation, a new discussion of where the city's going. So I think it'd be a great time. That's a great thing that was a great thing for me to start with.
Yeah.
This job. It gave me some kind of an agenda. So I think
You did a great job
Appreciate it.
guiding the ship through completing a lot of things in that comprehensive plan.
Again, they get me out of the way as soon as the money starts going. So I didn't do the stuff.
I said guiding the ship.
I talked about it, yeah. I'm good at talking about all that stuff. But yeah, I think it'll be a great time for the next person to come in and set that up. That's my speech.
Will you be coming back to the area once you
I plan to,
finish
yes.
your international travels?
I should be back in the area in this winter. But I do not have definite.
Are you just traveling for fun, or do you have, I mean, maybe I'm asking too many personal
We
questions.
switch off the meeting.
Maybe
I can
another
end-
time.
Want me to
I was
close
gonna say,
the
we probably
meeting?
should close the meeting.
Yeah. I'm going to close the meeting of the Waynesboro Planning Commission. Okay, so now we're closed. So where are you going?
You gotta have a motion.
Yeah, we
Oh, I need to have a motion.
Sorry,
Sorry, I was getting excited, okay? All
Move to adjourn.
I'll second.
We'll second.
right, everyone in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
All right, we're adjourned.